So I was sent a screener for the movie The Invisible Raptor. Now, typically with titles like this, I am very hesitant to watch them because I find movies like this with the silly titles to usually just have no merit to them, to have no actual entertainment value. I find that they have zero budget, they have zero talent attached to them. I find them to be lacking any kind of entertainment value. They usually put a little focus on making a poster and coming up with a title. And then when you watch the movie, it has $3 put towards it. It has zero talent behind it and is worth absolutely none of your time. And so when I see titles like this, like The Shark Exorcist or The Velocipaster, it's like I want those movies to be entertaining. I want those movies to be clever, to be funny, to be memorable. And then when I actually sit down to watch most of these, they're not. And with this one, I thought I had heard some buzz around this one. And, because it was a screener and because my wife is currently out of town, I was like, you know what? Screw it. It said it had Sean Astin in it, which he's in it for like 2 minutes. And honestly, it was my least favorite part of the movie, but we'll get there. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to throw this on. Let's check it out. I'll give it a few minutes. If it's awful, then I will stop, and you guys will never hear about it because I don't talk about the movies I don't finish. So I threw it on, and the opening actually reinforced my fears. Like I was like, oh no, this is going to be really stupid and not in a good way, not in an entertaining, funny way. And I was like, kind of like, oh, what have I gotten myself into? Maybe I should shut this off. Um, and I just stuck with it. And then we got to the actual movie after that opening scene. And we're introduced to our main character who works at this dino park. And, from there, I genuinely thought this movie was an absolute blast. Like, I really enjoyed this. This is an almost 2 hour long movie, which is another part of the hesitation I had when I went to press play on this. But man, I was greatly entertained throughout. I actually thought that the humor in this and the delivery of the lines and of the material and the writing itself was all very solid. I was actually very surprised by that. I know that the main actor is one of the main writers of this movie, and I really laughed a lot. I had a really damn good time with this movie. It is very silly humor, but I thought it was very clever, and I was, as I said, I was greatly entertained. There is a lot of Jurassic Park nods in here, from the characters' names to a random cameo that I don't think anyone would probably catch unless they're like some big Jurassic Park fanatic. But there's a character who plays a DJ in this, and that's all I'll say. So if you watch it, we'll see if you can recognize them, and if you can't, go into the IMDb credits and find out who it is. So you might not even reference it or know who this person is. But I was like, oh wow, and they actually do a play on a famous line of theirs within the Jurassic Park franchise. So I was like, okay, man, they really, really are going for it here. There's also an Encino Man reference in here, which I wasn't expecting. And the guy who does it looks exactly like the guy who does it in Encino Man. And I was trying to Google it to see if it was actually him. But he did look a little younger than I would assume he probably is now. But regardless, I was like, whoa, okay, that was interesting. There's a decent amount of references to other films too, so you can tell that they wear their influences on their sleeve with these filmmakers. And the as far as like invisible raptor. So, with the idea of an invisible raptor, the thing, of course, that I immediately thought of when I saw this is this took me back to when I used to watch Mystery Science Theater 3000 a lot growing up, and there's an episode called Cave Dwellers, and in it, uh, Ator and Thong, they start fighting these invisible people, and one of them cracks a joke. I think it's Crow, can't remember, but he cracks a joke of like, oh, they couldn't afford actors, so they like made them invisible. And that's immediately what I thought of when I saw this title, and when I went to press play, I was like, oh, so this is just kind of a clever way to get around, I don't have a budget, and so I'm going to just make my monster invisible. So that makes it very simple. It's just like scream at the nothing that's there, and we don't even have to make a puppet. We don't have to do anything. It's invisible. But there's so much like effects work in here with CGI, and it isn't great. So admittedly not great CGI. But there is a lot of effects towards it being invisible because it has to eat things, it has to kill things, it has to move around, its footprints, its scratch marks, it's how it moves cars, how it does this and that. There's a lot of gags in here with it being invisible that actually presented a big challenge on itself. So I actually think that they didn't just do a cop out of having an invisible raptor and everyone just screaming at nothingness. They took the time and the money, which this actually had a bigger budget than I would have expected. I don't know how big it is, but it's not like an asylum picture or anything like that. This is just like a mid-budget, super fun. It's low budget, but like a higher low budget, if that makes sense. Um, but yeah, I was pretty impressed with the fact that this wasn't a cop out, that the invisible raptor thing didn't end up being what I feared. And there is a lot of death. There is a lot of kills in this. Now, there's a couple that are like graphic, but they are CG for the most part, and they don't look amazing. But I don't know. I vibed with it, and I really loved our main characters here. You got Doctor Grant, which I mean that's an obvious one. Um, that's his first name though, but it doesn't matter. Grant and his buddy Denny, and their chemistry and their back and forth, like they're the odd couple, right? Like you've got the really smart doctor, like who's working at some silly kids amusement park for dinosaurs because with a degree in archaeology like he has, uh I used to date a girl who we were together for a while, and I found a degree in her room. It was like buried under stuff, and I'm like, what is this? And she was like, oh, I went to school and I have a bachelor's, or I think it was a bachelor's or something, in archaeology. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? She never mentioned it to me ever. And she's like, well, I mean, I don't, she was a waitress, at this restaurant in town. That's how we met. And I was like, what do you mean? What are you doing? And she's like, you have any idea how impossible it is to like get on a dig to do anything with a degree like this? She's like, I don't do anything with it. It's like a paperweight. And that's actually one of the first eye-opening moments for me as an adult. I was really young at this time, in my early 20s. That made me realize like how much of a scam this stuff can be, and how even if you go to college doesn't mean you're going to have a leg up. Anyways, putting all that aside, I was just reminded of that within here. But this guy he's not doing anything within archaeology, and he's having to lower himself to work at this park. And his ex-girlfriend shows up, and he's having to like rap and dance with a dinosaur, and it's really funny. And I thought so much of the dialogue, like I laughed throughout. I mean, throughout the whole film. I thought the whole film was super funny. I was actually laughing at a lot. I thought the writing was very clever. Pretty juvenile, but still very clever, very funny. Very surprised by how funny I actually thought this film was, how clever I thought a lot of scenes were. And as far as like the Raptors carnage throughout town, that was all very entertaining as well. So this was a big win. I'm kind of shocked at how much I enjoyed this. This was like one of my favorite horror comedies I've watched this year. So I hope that people, I hope the title doesn't hurt the film more than it helps it, because I feel like a movie like this, most people will just completely overlook because they're gonna think it's like another Asylum movie or a Velocipastor or something with a $2 budget and zero talent attached to it. And it's not that at all. Like, this is actually worth your time if you're into something like this. This is the kind of movie I wish they all were. If more horror comedies that have these silly titles and silly premises were like this, I would be much more open, much more inclined to actually watch these things. But unfortunately, so many of them are so terrible, and not in a fun, it's so bad it's good kind of way. They're just not. A lot of modern silly horror movies are soulless. They have absolutely nothing to offer the audience. And it's a shame because there's so many titles that I'm like, that's funny. That's a funny, clever title. That's a funny, clever premise that I wish actually had some talent, some effort put behind it, because that could actually be entertaining. And movies like that used to be entertaining in the 80s, but nowadays they're just trash. They're not entertaining trash. They're just useless time wastes. And for me, I am really bummed out by that, because it really does upset me that the market is flooded with so much garbage now. I actually genuinely think it hurts the genre. And you know everyone's trying to make that like Sharknado, that makes a bunch of money with very little effort put into it. And it's movies like this that come out once in a while that I'm like, no, this is the type of film they should be. These are the types of movies that I wish they made more of. When you want to watch a silly movie called The Invisible Raptor, this is what I'm always hoping they'll be. And I'm so glad that one finally was that. And I did have an actual genuine good time, because like, it's very self-aware of what it is, but it actually has real talent put behind it, in the writing and in the acting. The characters are fun. They implore the help of his ex-girlfriend, who's just hot as hell, and very likable. And their chemistry is funny because there's a lot of uh, subversion humor, where you think something's going to happen and then the opposite happens, which a lot of humor is that, but this is like subversion humor. And then there's this lady who I've seen in a ton of things, who plays like the she's like, she owns a chicken place, and there's a lot of funny lines with her. So this might not be your brand of humor, but you know, give it a shot. Get past the opening with Sean Astin. That's the worst part of the movie. I actually think that is like, that actually hurts the film a little bit for me, because I feel like it will turn a lot of people off to it that just randomly press play on it if it ever drops on like an Amazon Prime or a Netflix or something, where they're going to press play and they're going to be like, yep, this is exactly what I thought it was going to be. Stupid, moving on. And it's like, oh no, you got to stick with it until you at least meet Dr. Grant. Once you meet him and he does his whole like archaeology shtick, where he pulls out the raptor claw like Dr. Grant in Jurassic Park. A lot of Jurassic Park references in here. But once he does that and he's with the kids and he does the stuff with the dinosaur, the dance, as I had said, if after that you're not somewhat entertained, then maybe this isn't going to be for you. But I was laughing a decent amount throughout that, and then as we went on, I was like laughing more and more. So, really fun film, and I highly recommend it to anyone who is into these types of movies and wish they were actually entertaining. So there you go. That's my review. It comes out December the 6th, and I what's funny is that I'm seeing this early, and the movie comes out on December 6th. Same thing happened with Y2K. We were invited to a screening of it. It comes out December 6th. Our embargo also lifts on December 2nd, as does this one. They're both horror comedies, with pretty silly premises, and I enjoyed this one more. That's so fucking crazy to me that an A24 film that I saw in the theater, which was, you'll see our review for it. It was entertaining. I had a decent time. I laughed at some moments, but this one was way more like consistently funny. I laughed throughout the entirety of this film, as to where with Y2K, it was very 50-50 for me. Like some jokes really didn't land at all, and other jokes were like, oh yeah, that was fun. This to me was more entertaining. So if you're gonna see either, shockingly for me, I'm gonna recommend The Invisible Raptor. I know sounds crazy, but try it out. Let me know. Adios.